Today, the phone market is controlled by two companies, Apple and Samsung. Together, they hold close to 80% of the US smartphone market. But before either of them existed in the phone business, there were brands that billions of people relied on every single day. Motorola, Nokia, Palm, BlackBerry, HTC, and LG. These companies did not just make phones, they invented the technology that made modern smartphones possible, and one by one, they all disappeared. It starts with the company that invented the cell phone itself. On April 3rd, 1973, a Motorola engineer named Martin Cooper stood on a street corner in Midtown Manhattan, picked up a prototype the size of a brick, and made the first portable cell phone call in history. He called his rival at AT&T's Bell Labs just to let him know Motorola had beaten them. The device weighed nearly 2 pounds and had 30 minutes of battery life. It took another decade of development and $100 million before Motorola could turn it into a product. In 1983, Motorola released the Dynatac 8000X, the first commercial cell phone. It cost $3,995, weighed almost 2 pounds, and took 10 hours to charge for half an hour of talk time. Consumers did not care. The waiting lists were in the thousands. The phone became famous when Michael Douglas used one in the 1987 movie Wall Street. Throughout the 1980s and 1990s, Motorola dominated the cell phone market. The MicroTac in 1989 was the smallest phone in the world. The StarTAC in 1996 popularized the flip phone. In 2004, the Razr became a global phenomenon, selling over 130 million units and becoming the best-selling flip phone of all time. But after the Razr, Motorola had nothing. The company failed to follow up with anything competitive in the smartphone era. Nokia overtook Motorola as the world's largest phone maker in 1998, and Motorola never got the lead back. In 2011, the company split into two. Motorola Solutions kept the enterprise and government communications business. Motorola Mobility, the phone division, was sold to Google in 2012 for $12.5 billion. Google kept the patents and sold the rest to Lenovo in 2014 for $2.9 billion. The company that invented the cell phone was sold for spare parts. While Motorola faded, Nokia became the most dominant phone brand the world had ever seen. Nokia was a Finnish company that started in 1865 as a paper mill. Over the next century, it evolved through rubber boots, cable manufacturing, and electronics before releasing its first mobile phone in 1987. By the late 1990s, Nokia was unstoppable. The Nokia 3310, released in 2000, became one of the best-selling phones in history. It was practically indestructible and its battery lasted for days. Everyone played Snake. At its peak, around 2007, Nokia held roughly 40% of the global mobile phone market. No phone company before or since has achieved that level of dominance. But Nokia made the same mistake as BlackBerry. When Apple launched the iPhone in 2007, Nokia's leadership dismissed it. They believed physical keyboards and their own Symbian operating system were superior. By the time Nokia realized the world had moved to touchscreens and apps, it was too late to catch up. In 2011, Nokia's new chief executive, Stephen Elop, made a decision that is still debated today. Instead of adopting Android, which was free and already growing fast, Nokia partnered exclusively with Microsoft and adopted Windows Phone as its operating system. The partnership was a disaster. Windows Phone never attracted enough app developers. Consumers avoided it because it had no apps. Developers avoided it because it had no consumers. It was a death spiral. In 2013, Microsoft bought Nokia's phone division for $7.2 billion. Within 2 years, Microsoft wrote off the entire purchase and laid off thousands of Nokia employees. Stephen Elop, the man who had engineered the Microsoft deal, was himself a former Microsoft executive. Many Nokia employees and Finnish citizens viewed the whole episode as a betrayal. Nokia, as a phone company, was dead. The brand was later licensed to a startup called HMD Global, which sells budget Android phones under the Nokia name, but it has never recaptured more than a fraction of its former market share. Before the iPhone changed everything, another company had already imagined the smartphone of the future. Palm invented the personal digital assistant in the 1990s with the Palm Pilot, a handheld device that let people manage contacts, calendars, and notes in their pocket. It was revolutionary. Millions of business professionals carried one. In the early 2000s, Palm released the Trio, a phone that combined the Palm Pilot with cellular connectivity. It was one of the first true smartphones, but Palm was slow to modernize. By the time the iPhone arrived, Palm was behind. In 2009, Palm made one final brilliant play. They hired John Rubinstein, a recently retired Apple engineer who had helped create the iPod, and he built WebOS, an operating system that reviewers loved. The Palm Pre, powered by WebOS, was praised for its elegant design and multitasking features. But the hardware had problems. The App Store was nearly empty, and it launched exclusively on Sprint, limiting its reach. In 2010, HP bought Palm for $1.2 billion, hoping to use WebOS for tablets. That failed too. The Palm brand was eventually sold to TCL, and WebOS ended up inside LG televisions as their smart TV operating system. Palm, the company that imagined the smartphone before anyone else, was carved up and scattered. I want to make a separate video on BlackBerry, so I will keep this brief. At its peak in 2010, BlackBerry controlled 43% of the American smartphone market. The device was so addictive, it was called the Crackberry. Barack Obama refused to give his up when he became president, but BlackBerry dismissed the iPhone, botched its touchscreen response with the disastrous Storm, and clung to physical keyboards while the world moved on. By 2016, BlackBerry's global smartphone market share was 0%. The company pivoted to cybersecurity software, and it still exists, but it has not made a phone in years. Then there was the company that built the very first Android phone. In 2008, HTC released the HTC Dream, also known as the T-Mobile G1. It was the first phone to run Google's Android operating system, the software that now powers over 70% of the world's smartphones. HTC should have owned the Android era. For a few years, it almost did. The HTC Evo 4G, the HTC One series, and the original Google Nexus One, which HTC manufactured, were all critically acclaimed. In 2011, HTC was the largest Android phone maker by revenue and briefly had a market capitalization of over $30 billion. But HTC could not compete with Samsung's massive marketing budget and supply chain, or with the rising tide of cheaper Chinese manufacturers like Huawei and Xiaomi. HTC made a series of confusing product decisions, diluting its brand with too many models at too many price points. Revenue collapsed. In 2017, Google bought a large chunk of HTC's engineering team for $1.1 billion. HTC still technically makes phones in Taiwan, but its global market share is negligible. The company that launched the Android revolution was left behind by it. And finally, there is LG. The South Korean giant made phones for over 2 decades and was known for taking risks that other manufacturers would not. LG made phones with ultra-wide screens, phones with secondary displays on the back, and phones with audiophile-grade headphone outputs that music lovers adored. The LG G series and V series were genuinely innovative products. But innovation without market share is just a hobby. LG's mobile division lost money for 23 consecutive quarters, roughly 6 straight years of losses. On April 5th, 2021, LG officially announced it was shutting down its mobile phone business entirely. The company said the decision would allow it to focus on electric vehicle components, smart home technology, and robotics. LG still makes some of the best televisions in the world, but you will never buy another LG phone. Every brand in this video helped build the world we live in today. Motorola proved that a phone could be portable. Nokia proved it could be for everyone. Palm proved it could be smart. BlackBerry proved it could handle your email. HTC proved it could run Android, and LG proved it could be different, but in the end, none of that was enough. The phone industry is the most brutal consumer electronics market ever created. 2 companies won. Everyone else is a memory. Thanks for watching. If you carried any of these phones, tell me which one in the comments. And if you have not already, subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the next one.